Good afternoon, gentlemen. Welcome to today's afternoon session classes. Today we will see a few slides on this last class on the fuses or revision on fuses, and on completion of that we will go to high voltage. What are the hazards of the high voltage, and what are the PP required for high voltage, and we will see the permit to work systems format, how you make a permit to work systems. Also, we will touch upon risk assessment. What are the basic concept of making risk assessment? And if the time permits, we'll do the insulation resistance test, and that's the last chapter. Okay. So we'll see on high voltage. This is the last class, but few questions I want to just again revise. So we see the high voltage fuses. So what is the thermal characteristic of fuses? Okay. What are the thermal characteristic of fuses? You see, the fuses are characterized by thermal and interrupting characteristic. There are two characteristics. One is thermal characteristic, and the other one is the interrupting characteristic. The thermal characteristic, it relates to the current rating and the melting time of the fuse. Okay, current rating and melting time of the fuse are generally associated with the thermal characteristic, and the interrupting characteristic is related to the voltage ratings. Okay, so as we know, like the current, as the magnitude of the current increases, when the current increases, what happens? The melting time will reduce, because the current has reduced, the melting time reduces. So it is obvious from the larger magnitude, currents will lead to higher power dissipation, because power is equal to I square into R. So more power dissipation, more heat. So naturally we can make out that the magnitude of the current increases, the melting time reduces. So this would imply that melting time of the fuse is inversely proportional to the magnitude of the square of the current. Okay. So from this we understand that thermal characteristic relates to current rating, and the melting time of fuses are generally associated with the thermal characteristic. And the relationship between magnitude of the current that causes melting and the time needed to melt is given by the TCC, that is the temperature. This is the temperature current characteristic. Okay, this is thermal characteristic of fuse related to the current. Now, why fuse is called inverse melting characteristic? You see, the inverse melting characteristic means when the overcurrent is in smaller magnitude, when suppose the current is less, then what happens? The rate of heat generated is also low. So it's only slightly higher than the rate dissipation. So as a consequence, temperature of the element increases very gradually. But when the current increases, melting time will reduce, at which is more expected an increased rate of heat generation. That is, power is equal to power is more, I square R. Now here, heat which is generated in reduced cross section or center of the element cannot be removed as fast as it is produced. So this gives a fuse an inverse characteristic. Okay, so this gives a fuse an inverse characteristic. That means when the current are in smaller magnitude, rate of rise is heat generated is slow. So this is called the inverse characteristic. Okay, it's not much important in this, and there is no much of questions also from these topics. Okay. So what are the interrupting characteristic of fuse? One is the voltage interrupting ratings are classified under interrupting characteristic. Voltage ratings are very important. We'll see few questions on this. I will come up and I will show you the next slide. So this is because if there are any inductive components in the circuit, okay, this is mainly because of the AC circuits. Whenever there are inductive components, then the melting time of the conductive element in the fuse is not enough for interrupting the current. So if suppose there are an inductive circuit, there can be, even the element is blown off, there can be an arc. Understood? So even though the element in the fuse is melted, the fuse is melted, the element is melted, you have two electrodes in between, you have the fuse element. Now the fuse element is melted, but there is a chance of arc in the fuse before the current is completely disconnected. So during this time, the fuse must hold the transient voltage. So in case of AC circuit, you have inductance and the fuse element is between two electrodes. Now the fuse element is blonde, but there will be an arc because of these inductive components in the circuit. So here the voltage ratings are very important because you cannot put a low voltage. The voltage means the voltage across these two electrode terminals. So that is voltage rating is important. This I will show you with one question in this. You see here you can see here the voltage rating of a fuse is a function of its capability to open a circuit under overcurrent conditions. The voltage rating determines the ability of a fuse to suppress the internal arcing that occurs after a fuse link melt and an arc is produced. So voltage rating will determine the ability of a fuse to suppress the internal arcing. Now why we have the internal arcing? Because of the inductive elements in the circuit, even the fuse melt, but you can get an arc. And that voltage across this arc is formed means what will happen? It can affect the further circuit. Your equipment can be affected. That is why here you can see here a 120 volt 5 amps fuse replaced with 250 5 amps fuse. And second thing, a 250 5 amps fuse replaced with a 120 volt 5 amps fuse. So from above this, which is acceptable? You can replace a lower voltage rated fuse with a higher rated voltage fuse. Now the current has to be same. It has to be 5 amps. This is the interrupting current. It has to be 5 amps, but the voltage can be higher. It's not in the other way. Suppose you have a circuit fuse which is of 250 volt 5 amps. You cannot replace this with a 120 volt 5 amps fuse. Why? Because when the fuse melt, the fuse is between the two electrodes, you have a fuse element. Even if it melt, because of the inductive components, it can give an arc. It can give an arc. So you should have a fuse which is rated of higher voltage. What it means, the higher voltage means the gap between these two electrodes. As the voltage increases, the gap is becoming more. So there cannot be any electrical arc can be produced. Hope you understood. When you have a 120 amps, 5 amps fuse, the gap between two electrodes are lesser. 250 means it is more. Now if I use a 50 volt, the gap is very less. So when the fuse blows off, because of the inductive component, there can be an arc. So if these two electrode elements are near, the arc can establish the circuit and it can damage the equipments. So you cannot replace a 250 volt 50 amps fuse with 120 volt, but you can use a 120 volt fuse 5 amps rated with 255 amps. The amps rating has to be correct because that is the interrupting capacity, but you cannot replace a higher voltage fuse with a lower voltage fuse. Okay. And calculate the appropriate fuse for a motor which is 440 volt, power rating 5.5 kilowatt. So how do you do this? You see, power is equal to voltage by power is equal to the current. P is equal to V into I. So I is equal to P by V. Okay. So if you see a DC circuit, you can straight away get power divided by voltage. You get the current, but then you need to add a safety factor that has to be applied. So generally the safety factor is 1.25 or 1.35. So if it's a DC circuit, power divided by voltage multiplied by safety factor. If it is an AC circuit, a three-phase circuit, in this case, it will be power watt, P watt divided by √3 multiplied by V into power factor multiplied by 1.25. So here it will be like 5500 watt. You have to convert into watt. So how much it will be? Around it will be 5500 watt divided by 440 volt, root 3 into 440 into power factor multiplied by 1.5. So that will give you the value of the fuse. Okay. So the calculation is same. Power is equal to voltage into current. You know, power equation, power is equal to voltage into current, or power is equal to V square by R. So power is equal to voltage into current, that is in case of DC circuits. In case of AC circuit, three-phase circuits, you need to multiply it with the root 3 and power factor. So here, motor voltage is 440 volt, power is 5.5 kilowatt. So 5500 watt divided by root 3 multiplied by 440 into power factor, then multiply altogether with 1.25. So the 1.25, it is a safety factor. Safety factor means if you are giving a little higher amps. If the fuse is rated 7 amps, you are putting around say 13 amps. So that is a safety factor. You need to multiply the safety factor with the current, so that you need to put a higher amps fuse. Because if the total current is 5 amps, you cannot put a 5 amps fuse. So you have to multiply with the safety factor about 1.25. Okay, so this is the importance of fuse. The voltage rating. Voltage rating is very important because the voltage rating specifies what is the gap between the electrodes where you have the fuse element. So that is why you cannot replace a higher rated fuse with a lower rated voltage. Okay, so the correct one is you can replace 120 volt with 250 volt, not 250 with 120. Okay, so voltage rating of a fuse is a function of its capability to open a circuit under an overcurrent conditions, and the voltage rating determines the ability of the fuse to suppress the internal arcing. So the voltage rating is very significant because it will suppress the internal arcing. Why the internal arcing? It is only in case of AC circuits where you have inductance or inductive type load. It's not in case of DC. Okay, so this is the significance of voltage rating of a fuse. Then this we have seen. Okay, so this is a non-current limiting fuses. Now in this fuses there are two types. One is called current limiting and non-current limiting fuses. Non-current limiting fuse, current limiting fuse, and a vacuum fuse. There are three types fuse. Just for your information sake, what is this non-current limiting fuse? You can see this diagram here. This is called an explosion type. Explosion means it is, you know, like there's a gases which is inside, and there's a gas is generated by the arc and is expelled along with the ionized material, produces a physical gap so that at natural current zero. Okay, this natural current zero is only in case of AC circuits. Suppose if you see a one cycle, how many natural current are the natural current zero means 2 times. You see here, this is called natural current zero. Start from here, this is 0, this is also natural 0. So in AC circuit, there is no need of a forced current 0 because the current is alternating about 0. So there is a natural current 0 twice in each AC cycles. Natural current means this is automatically becoming 0 here. That is, in case of one cycle, you will find 2 natural current zeros. So the arc does not reignite and the current is interrupted. So this type of fuse therefore limits the duration of the fault but not the magnitude. Now you look at this diagram here, the fuse will start blow, the fuse blows opening circuit in about 1 cycle. The fuse blows from here. So it will permit this full cycle, means a current limiting fuse protective device permitting a short circuit current to build up its full value. That means the current will go like this, it will become like this, it will go here till full value. Then only it will interrupt the current. So current limiting protective device by permitting a short circuit current to build up its full value can let an immense amount of destructive short circuit heat energy through opening the circuit. So non-current limiting means it is not limiting the current. It will allow the full current to go through, and the last phase it will get, the fuse will blow off. The fuse blows opening circuit in about one cycle. That means it takes the full cycle, then it blows from here only. So this is called non-current limiting fuse. But if you look at the current limiting fuse and difference, you see here it's a current limiting fuse. As soon as the short circuit current starts, it will blow from here. So before it reaches the full cycle, it will blow off. We are using this type of fuses like in low voltage systems, and we are using this non-current limiting type fuses. And it is a proprietary device, cuts off a short circuit current. This is the short circuit current. It cuts off the short circuit current in less than half cycle before it reaches the total available value. And this is called current limiting. So the most modern fuse is current limiting, because the other fuse is non-current limiting, means it will wait for the full short circuit current to flow till here. Then it blows. But in this case, it will blow immediately at the start of the short circuit current. Okay. So a fuse will restrict fault currents to such low values that a high degree of protection is given to the circuit components against even a high short circuit current. So it will give a protection. It will not wait for the full short circuit current to flow. At the beginning itself, it will blow off. They minimize the need for other components to have a higher short circuit current withstand ratings. So a current limiting fuse has such a high speed of response, and it cuts off a short circuit long before it can build up to the full peak value. This is the difference between current limiting and non-current limiting. Non-current limiting, it will wait till it reaches the full current, and this will blow off at the initial stage itself. That's only the difference. How do you select a fuse for a particular load? Now, when you see a fuse, suppose on board ship also you find the fuse is blown, you don't have an appropriate fuse to replace it. So how do you select it? First thing is the current has to be same, because if you put higher amps, you are damaging the equipments. If you put lower amps, this will blow off very early. Okay, that means before, suppose your equipment is, suppose a battery charger in a light boat, you find the fuse is blown, which is rated, let's say 10 amps. And now if you put 8 amps, it will blow off, because 10 amps is the normal rated current in that. So you cannot put like 5 amps also, you cannot put 20 amps also. So the current rating has to be same. And the voltage rating, if it is like 12 volt, you can put a higher voltage. Say 24 volt you can put, but you cannot put a 5 volt fuse. So how do you select a fuse for a particular load? One is current rating. The continuously conducting maximum amount of current holds the fuse without melting is termed as the current rating. Okay, it is the current carrying capacity which is measured in amps. So always the current rating has to be same. If it is 5 amps, it has to be 5 amps. Voltage rating, yes, you can put a higher voltage rated, but not a lower voltage rated. Hope you understood why the significance of the voltage rating. It is because of the arc suppressions. If you put a lower voltage, arc will not be suppressed, and it can cause damage to your equipments. So voltage rating is significant, is very important. And IR2 rating. This IR2 rating, it is a measure of energy required to melt a fusing element. Okay, IR2 means it is a current. It is a thermal energy, measure of energy required to melt a fusing element. So in this there are two factors. One is time taken for the element to melt, and time takes for the electrical arc to settle. These two things has to be done. Time taken for the element to melt. How much time it takes to element to melt? That is a melting time. And the time taken for the electrical arc to settle. With this both combination is called the total clearing time. That is called the I square R, I square T. Okay, it's not I square R. I square R is the power. So it is the measure of the energy required to melt the fusing element. This rating you will find in some of the fuses. I square T ratings. So it is the amount of energy which is carried by the fuse element when there is an electrical fault or some short circuit happens. It measures the heat energy of the fuse. It is generated when it has been blown. Then breaking capacity. See, it can be a short circuit breaking capacity also. It can be a breaking capacity also. It's a maximum rating of the current without harm interrupt. The fuse is known as the breaking capacity of the fuse. And so these are the basic fuse ratings. So mainly you must see current rating and voltage rating. This is very important. And I square RT and the interrupt breaking capacities anyway, this will come in this current rating. And size of the fuse, what type of fuse, what type of material it is. So this is also important when you replace the fuse. High voltage, yes, Yobe?
Good afternoon, sir.
Yeah, good afternoon. Go ahead. Go ahead.
For AC rated fuse, will it blow if we use it for the same amount of DC current? For example, for 10 amps AC, if you use 10 amps DC fuse, will it get blow?
You see the DC and AC difference is that in case of DC, because there is no arcing take place in the case of DC fuse, because there is no inductive components in that. So that is why always you must use AC for AC fuse only for the AC circuits. Because this AC fuses caters for the arcing. In DC, because there is no question of arcing. So it is always better to replace AC fuse with the AC only. As you said, suppose you don't have an AC fuse, you replace with the DC fuse. It will not blow off, but your protection of the equipment is a question. Like in case of some arcing take place, what will happen? Because there is no arcing protections in the case of DC. Also, the RMS voltage varies. You see a fuse rated 230 volt DC. In case of AC, you have a peak voltage. It is a peak voltage which is coming. Peak voltage will be very high. That will be around 230 volt means it is 324 volt. The voltage is going to be on the higher side. So if you see a DC 230 and AC 230, AC has got peak voltage. It is much higher than the DC. So it is safer to replace AC fuse with the AC only. But if you use in case of a DC circuit, if you put a AC circuit, if you put a DC fuse, it is a question of the protection of the equipments. Because there is no arcing in case of DC. So the arcing again depend upon the placement of this electrode, whether it is far or near. You know, in case of AC, it caters for that. So you got the answer for your question, or?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. See, high voltage, we are having three type of fuses. One is cartridge type fuses, liquid type fuses, explosion type. We are using onboard ship cartridge type fuses. This explosion type fuses are used only in shore where they have the high power, high tension cables and all, they are using it. Onboard ship, we have only cartridge type fuses. So this cartridge type fuses, it is same like a normal low voltage fuse, but there are two elements in that. Some of them will find two elements in that. So on some design, the fuse element is wound in form of a helix so as to avoid the effect of due to the corona at high voltages. See, corona effect means, you must have seen corona effect is, 1 minute, I'll show you this corona effect. You see, this is called the corona effect. Corona means, you see this one you can see, corona discharge is an electric discharge caused by the ionization of a fluid such as an air surrounding a conductor carrying a high voltage. This represents a local region where air has undergone electrical breakdown and becomes conductive, allowing the charge to continuously leak off the conductor into the air. See, some of the high voltage tension lines, you will find this spark, some ignition like this, you know. This is called the corona effect. So here what happens is that this air has gone, the air because of this, it is actually like a, the air is a media here, and air has gone an electrical breakdown, air become conductive. So the charge will start continually leak off the conductor into the air. That is called the corona effect. Okay, this is called the corona. Sometimes we can find near the transformers and overhead transformers, or some lines, you say a spark like this. This is called corona effect, because there is a path through the air. The air electrical breakdown take place, and the charge will move through this. So it gives like a spark. Means through these different conductors, you can see this indication here. So this is called the corona effect. So corona discharge is an electric discharge caused by ionization of a fluid or ionization of an air surrounding the conductor carrying a high voltage. So in high voltage systems, when the air breaks down, there will be a electrical discharge that is known as corona effect. Okay. Corona effect and skin effect. It's very important. Skin effect also. I've just put this also in the skin effect. You see, skin effect means it's a tendency of an alternating current. It's only in case of AC current to become distributed in the conductor such that the current density is largest near the surface of the conductor. So here you can see that this is concentrating on this side. So the current density is larger on the outer side. That is called the skin. That is called skin. So in a conductor, the current concentration or the current densities become towards more on the outer side is known as the skin effect. So skin effect will reduce the effective cross-sectional area of the conductor and increases its effective resistance. So current flows over the surfaces more and no current flows in through the center. That is known as the skin effect and corona effect. Okay. So here in this case, in the high voltage, we are using cartridge type fuses, and on some design, the fuse element is wound in form of a helix so as to avoid the effect of corona at high voltages. In other design, there are two elements in this. One is a low resistance and one is a high resistance. Now, this low resistance is made up of silver, high is made up of tungsten. Under normal conditions, the low resistance element carries a normal current. During the occurrence of a fault, suppose there's a short circuit take place, low resistance is blown out and the high resistance element reduces the short circuit current and finally breaks down. So the loss initially, as soon as the short circuit take place, the low resistance will blow off and the high resistance current flow, but it reduces the short circuit. That is the advantage of it. It reduces the short circuit and finally breaks down. So the short circuit current is being reduced. There are some certain fuses in high voltage, cartridge type fuses. We have two elements, low resistance element and high resistance element. During a short circuit or high current, the low resistance element will blow off first and the high one will reduce the short circuit, but finally it is in parallel like this. So that is why some of them has got this dual element in cartridge type fuses. Liquid type and explosion type, we don't use this on board ship. But this is having a liquid which is inside, it's a explosion type, it's a gas inside. So liquid type, there are used to circuit up to 100 amps rated current and systems up to 132 kV. And this have a glass filled with a carbon tetrachloride. This one end of the tube is packed and other is fixed by a phosphorus bronze wire. So when the fuse operation starts, the liquid uses in the fuse extinguish the arc. So the arc is extinguished by the liquid here, but here it is a gas. This is the difference. Okay, so this one is we have discussed about the voltage rating. Commonly used fuse materials are basically like tin, lead, copper, zinc and silver. For currents up to 10 amps, tin and alloy of the tin and lead are used. You see on board ship, you can use this fuse wire also. Each fuse wire, they mention like whether it is 1 amps or 5 amps, whatever it is. In emergency, you can use a fuse wire also. So the current up to 10 amps or that is a combination of tin and lead, but higher voltage copper and silver is used. So copper is usually tin to prevent it from oxidization. Zinc strips are used when considerable time lag is required. So this is the material which is used, and this is called HRC fuses, high rupturing type fuses. This you can see on board ship. Now here you can see this is a fuse element and this is the electrodes in this. You see, this is a gap which is in this, which specifies the voltage ratings. Here you can see this is a gap. This is the one which is melting off the fuse element. So the shortcoming of uncertain and low breaking capacities of semi-enclosed rewirable fuses are overcome in HRC, high rupturing capacities. It consists of a resisting ceramic body with metal and caps to which it is welded silver current carrying current. The space surrounding the element is filling powder is filled. The filling powder can be chalk, or it can be plaster of Paris, or it can be quartz or marble dust. The purpose of this filling powder is to quench the arc, to absorb the arc. So this is in case of HRC fuses, you will mostly find some sand also in this. So the whole purpose is this filling element is to absorb the arc. Okay. So I was telling you about this is the fusing element. This called the electrodes. These two are the electrodes. So when the voltage rating is very low, this gap will be very less. So what happens when the high current flows, this will melt off, but because of the inductive current, there can be an arc through this. And the current can still flow. There is an arc here and it can go to your equipment which is to be protected. So if you use a very low voltage, this gap is much lesser. If you use higher voltage, the gap is more. So the arc cannot build up. That's the difference between the low voltage with the voltage significance of the voltage ratings. So voltage rating has to be higher so that there should be enough gap. And so it protects your equipment in case of a short circuit, basically from the arc. Okay. So how do you select the fuse for power systems? One is the voltage rating, breaking capacities, ambient temperature. So as I told you, ambient temperature also very important, because ambient temperature is a measure of the temperature of the air immediately surrounding the fuse. Since fuse is enclosed in panel mounted fuse holder or placed near the heat dissipating components like resistors, or ambient temperature is usually much higher than the surrounding room temperatures. So this is very important, ambient temperature also. And the normal rating I told you, IR square T. This I square RT is basically the measure of the energy required to melt the fusing element. It's a combination of two, Tm plus Tc. This is the total clearing, fault clearing time. And Tm means time take for the fuse element to melt is the Tm. And Ta is the time take for the electrical arc to settle. So total it Tc is equal to combination of both. This rating on the fuse will find this I square T ratings. So whenever you replace the fuse, you must see this I square T also. What is I square T ratings of the fuse? So with this, we are finished with this fuse, and we'll go to the next slide. Okay, so this is today's topic. What we have covered on the last was the previous classes on the fuses. So today's topic we'll be discussing on what are the hazards of high voltage. Okay, what are the hazards of high voltage? What are the personal protective equipments you needed for the high voltage? We'll see each one of them and what are the applications. Then we'll see high voltage test equipments. And risk assessment also. Just I'll give a brief idea about risk assessment. What are the factors to be considered, why we need a risk assessment, and then we'll see permit to work, how a permit to work is, what is the format of this permit to work, what are the parameters to be entered in this, and then we'll see a full high voltage working. That is, today I have decided for the one generator winding inspections. On a high voltage generator, winding inspections, how you carry out a winding inspection of a generator from the beginning step onwards. What are the steps to be taken till you finish the job? Okay, so that is for today. Let's see this. What are the hazards? High voltage hazards means we must recognize three common electrical hazards that cause injury, even death. while working or near electrical equipment and systems. So what are the hazards with the high voltage? One is the electrical shock, electrocution. You see, electrical shock and electrocution both are two different things, as you know. Electrocution means death due to electrical shock is electrocution. Electrocuted means it is a death. Electrical shock means it's only shock. You can get injury, you can fall, or you can get a burn, etc. like that. So this is the difference between electrical shock and the electrocution. Then arc flash burns from contact. You can get arc flash burns. Because of the arc flash, you can get burns. And there can be there can be flash also, it can be radiant. Then you can have a arc blast. Arc blast means impact from the expanding air and vaporized material. So these are the various hazards from the high voltage. One is electrocution, electrical shock, arc flash, arc also, arc flash, arc blast. So these are the hazards which is because of the high voltage. Now, generally, when you work on a high voltage, we are supposed to keep certain distance. You see, this is in case you are working on a high voltage. Up to 6.6 kV, you have to maintain a safe distance of 2.56. This is a safe distance from the high voltage. This means I am talking about no maintenance or repairs. Like you have a high voltage equipment which is working, switchboard. How much distance you should keep away? That is a safe working distance is, this is what it says, like up to 6.6, if you see on board ships and all, says 2.56 meters is the safe distance. Okay, this is a working distance. Now coming to the electrical shock. Okay, electrical shock means the effect of electrical current on the human body. Now this electrical shock, there are circuit characteristics are current, resistance, frequency, and voltage. So what are the effect of this? Circuit characteristic means it is current, resistance, frequency, and voltage. Now, how we get an electrical shock? Either you touch any live parts or you touch naked wires or whatever it is, you get an electrical shock in that case. You see, how you withstand this electrical shock depends upon your resistance of your body. If your body resistance is less or more, you can withstand the electrical shock. Now here, second it says contact and internal resistance of the body. So that is the internal resistance of the body. The current's pathway through the body is determined by the contact location and internal body chemistry. So how the current is passing through your body, that's also very important. And that is determined by the contact locations, like which part is touching, your hand is touching, your body is touching, or depend upon the current path. So the current path is depend upon how your body is touching it. And second thing is the environmental conditions. You see, environmental condition means that affect your body's contact resistance. Whether your skin resistance can be changed as a function of moisture present in the external and internal layers, with changes due to the ambient temperature, humidity, or your anxiety or body tissue, vital organs, blood vessels, nerve systems, some cut on the body. So all this can affect your body resistance. So environmental conditions affecting your body's contact resistance to understand the currents possible in the human body. Now here, if you look at this electrical shock, which is more dangerous, what do you think, AC or DC? Which gives a more shock? You think AC or DC? You see, in case of DC, when we say RMS, suppose you say 230 volt, 230 volt AC means that is the RMS voltage. Okay, if you say 230 volt AC means that's RMS voltage, which is equivalent to 230 volt in DC. So the domestic supply, let's say it is 230 volt AC. That means it's the RMS voltage. It means AC voltage has the same effect of as 230 volt DC. But if you see the instantaneous voltage, you know, V is equal to Vm sin omega t. But RMS voltage is RMS voltage of AC is 230 volt, which is equivalent to 230 voltage of DC. But in case of AC, it's the peak voltage. The peak voltage is going to be much higher than the RMS voltage, because peak voltage is, if you see the peak voltage means it is 1.2 into RMS voltage. So peak voltage will be 1.414 multiplied by 230 volt, which would be around 325 volt. So in this case, if you see, the AC is more dangerous. So DC 230 volt is equivalent to RMS voltage of AC 230, but the peak voltage of AC is going to be 235 volt, because peak voltage is in AC is equal to root 2 multiplied by the RMS voltage. So in this way, if you look, AC is much higher. So the shock from the AC is going to be higher. Now, second thing is that what is the effect of shock at higher frequencies? So what happens in case of higher frequencies? Whether suppose you have a 50 hertz and 60 hertz, what will happen in this? See, in case of a DC circuit, you know, like current is equal to V by R, but in case of AC circuit, current is equal to V by Z. DC circuit, current means voltage divided by current. But in case of AC circuit, it is current equal to voltage by Z. Z is a combination of inductance and capacitance and resistance. It's the total resistance. So in case of an inductive circuits, let's say you got 50 hertz frequencies. If you see a 50 hertz frequency means, if you see the total inductive reactance, that is inductive reactance, you know, 2 pi FL, that will be around say 50 hertz. If you see a 3000 volt 50 hertz means this inductance will be, let's say, around 33.63 or roughly about in 50 hertz. But if you see in a 60 hertz, this inductance is going to be much higher than the 50 hertz. So when the frequency was 50 hertz, what will happen? Because in case of 50 hertz, your inductance is lower, so the current is more. When the frequency has increased to 60 hertz, inductance has increased, the impedance has increased, so the current has reduced. That means at 50 hertz, the current is 89 amps, let's say, and 60 hertz, the current will be 75 amps. So the more higher frequency, the current is reduced. So at higher frequencies, current is reduced. So the shock level is also reduced at higher frequencies. Lower frequencies, current is more because of the inductive reactance. Because lower the frequency, then it will have a less impedance. Higher the frequencies, higher impedance. Impedance, you know, total resistance. So if you look at this, I is equal to V by Z, when the impedance becomes more for a rated voltage, the current reduces. So we can say from this that higher frequencies, the current will be less comparing with the lower frequencies. Okay. So the effect of shock at higher frequencies will be lesser than the shock at lower frequencies. And second thing is, what is the effect of shock at higher voltage? Higher voltage, you can just see directly that because I is equal to V by R. So what will happen if V is more? I is equal to V by R. So higher voltage means I is equal to V by R means I is much higher at higher voltage. So the current will be, for electrical shock, if it's say in this case, you will have a higher shock, higher current, higher shock. So these are the two things. Which is more giving you shock, AC or DC? It is because of the AC. In case of AC, your peak voltage is much higher. In DC, there is no peak voltage. DC RMS 230 volt in AC RMS is equal to 230 volt DC. But in AC, you have a peak voltage, and peak voltage is root 2 multiplication of the RMS voltage. So peak voltage will be much higher. 230 volt AC means the peak voltage is 320 volt, 325 volt. But in DC, it is 230 volt. So you can see AC is a higher voltage. So it is AC is more dangerous than DC. Okay. So this I want to specify why AC is more dangerous. Somebody ask you why AC is more dangerous than DC because of the peak voltage in case of AC is more. And other one reason is that this AC has got a direct effect on your cardiac systems and all. So it is more dangerous in case of an AC shock. And other thing is that the capacitance effect of the AC, because a victim's body acting like an insulating media. So the live wire and the grounding systems, no, because somebody is touching a live wire and other side is the grounding. So in between it forms like a capacitance effect. Now in this case you can see here, if it's a DC, the DC offers infinite resistance because F is equal to 0. So your Xc is equal to 1 by 2 pi Fc. When F is equal to 0, the capacitive reactance will be infinite. That's another one more reasons. In case of DC, the frequency is equal to 0. So the capacitive reactance will be infinite. Infinite means it's open circuit. So we can see that capacitor blocks the DC. But in case of AC, the impedance will be resistance plus capacitance. So 50 by 60 hertz means overall the impedance is decreased. But AC is more dangerous than DC in case when human body acts as a capacitor. This is also another reason AC is more dangerous. So two things you can say in case of which is more dangerous, AC. Because of one is a peak voltage. Second thing is your victim body is acting like a capacitance. Okay, so AC is more dangerous. That is another reason. Two reasons. And third one is AC is affecting our cardiac systems more. So that is also one more reason. So 3 points for this. Which is more dangerous, AC or DC? And what determines electrical shock? The electrical shock is determined by the body resistance. Okay, because human body resistance to electricity under dry conditions, the human body is around 100,000 ohms. 100,000 ohms is the body resistance. But when the body is wet or like a broken skin, it drops the resistance to 1000 ohms. So people, those are having higher resistance, they don't feel sometimes shock. You can see people even touches 230 volt, they don't feel it. It's because of the body resistance. They have a higher body resistance, so they don't feel the shock much. And the body resistance is basically normally it's around 10K to 100K is the body resistance, but it can drop because of the atmospheric conditions also it can drop. So what it determines the effect of shock is the body resistance. Okay, 3 points in this. Then what are the main type of electrical injuries? So as I told you, like electrocution means it's a death, and the electrical shock, because of the electrical shock, there can burns, there can fall down. And again, the severity of the shock depends upon the path of the current from through the body, how the current is passing and how much current is flowing. How much time is length of the time the body is in the circuit, how much time you are exposed. So that depends upon the severity of the shock, depends upon path of the current, amount of the current, length of the time the body is in the circuit. So we can say what causes the electrical shock, current or voltage? It's a current. So it is a current that flows through the body that causes the electrical shock. But it is a voltage level and the electrical path resistance that determines how much current is flowing. You see, everything is related here. We cannot say it's only current. It's the voltage level is also important. So the voltage level of a circuit is taken as determining factor how dangerous it is and the precaution level needed to work on such circuit. That is why always we see dangerous high voltage. You don't see dangerous high current. Because of the dangerous high voltage, the voltage level is the one which decides how much current flows. So always you'll find like high voltage. You don't find anywhere high current warning signs. Dangerous high voltage. Okay. So it is the current that flows through the body that causes the electrical shock, but it is the voltage level and the electrical path resistance determine how much current flows. So two things are involved, voltage level and the body path resistance. So what are the causes of electrical shock? Current or voltage? It's a current, but it is related to voltage and the body resistance or resistance path. Here you can see 1 milliamps means it can be felt by the body. 2 to 10 milliamps means minor shock, might result in fall. 10 to 25 milliamps loss of muscle control, may not be able to let go current. 25 to 75 milliamps means painful, may lead to collapse or death. 75 to 300 milliamps last quarter second, almost immediately fatal. You see, the current, even a small current, also can give you shock if the resistance is less. It's all the resistance matters the bodies. Because if you give a heart, like if you just give even a very 1 milliamps current also, it can cause a death because there is no resistance. That's going to be very high. So the resistance matters. The shock is the resistance, body resistance matters, and the voltage level matters. Okay. What causes electrical shock, current or voltage? It is a current caused by the voltage level and the path resistance that determines how much current is flowing. Okay. Hope you understood these points. Electrical shock, I have discussed you all the points. What is electrical shock? It is due to voltage or current. It is because of the current, but related to voltage also. Okay. The current flows through the body, causes the electrical shock. Electrical shock is caused because of the current, but it's the voltage level and the electrical path. So these things are clear, these points. Electrical shock, I covered it with you elaborately. So what is electrical shock? Which is more dangerous, AC or DC? What is the effect of higher shock at higher frequencies, higher voltage? What determines electrical shock? Okay. So this is electrical shock. Here you can see here 1 milliamps means barely perceptible. But 60 milliamps maximum current an average man can grasp. Let go current at 16 milliamps. Up to 15, 16 milliamps, it's let go. 20 to 33 paralysis of respiratory systems. 100 milliamps ventricular fibrillation threshold. And it's a path also it takes, how it goes. You see, path, harm is related to the path by which the current passes through the body. Okay, so this is the estimated effect of the AC currents. So hope I think the electrical shock is clear. And we'll go to the next. Okay, before we go to the PPE, I just want to introduce you what are the hazards. So one hazard we have seen is the electrical shock. Second, we will see arc flash, arc blast. Then we go to the PPE. As we know, electrical arc means what? It is electricity flows or discharge along an unindented path. This is the electrical arc, and these two are the electrodes. So electricity can jump, during an arc from nearby or grounded object. Arcing is also called electrical arcing occurs when the electric current flows through the air from one conductive part to the another. The heat and light energy emitted by arcing current is called arc energy and may cause sufficient injury or death to exposed workers. Even a normal arc can also cause you injury. Okay. Then another is the arc flash. You see the arc flash, because of the arc, sometimes it can lead to arc flash. So it is arc flash, arc blast. This is a starter panel here. You can see here an explosive release of energy caused by an electrical arc. It is caused by an electrical arc. An arc flash results from either phase to ground or phase to phase fault caused by some circumstances as accidental contact with electrical systems, buildup of conductive dust, corrosion, drop tools, improper work procedure, a short circuit. Suppose you have R and Y phase, you short circuit it. So that is an arc flash. You will find an arc flash. And arc flash burns can cause slow, painful death, but even when they aren't fatal, they can do severe damage. The gases can injure lungs, impair your breathings. Even curable burns can result in painful skin and tissue injury that can take weeks and months to heal. There are few arc flash burn photos you can see in this. So this is arc flash also can lead to minor injuries. Okay, these injuries can be, you must have seen different type of burns also, like degree 1, degree 2, degree 3. Degree 1 burn means it is mild burn, but degree 2 is it can damage your skin, but degree 3 means it is extreme. It can have a very deeper burns. So the burning degree, like number 1 degree, number 2 burn degree, number 3, this can also have curable burns because of the arc flash. So you can see here, like short circuiting 2 of this, it can lead to intense light more than 2000 times normal light of the office light, it's sunlight. So it can be, yeah, extreme heat is 20,000 degrees centigrade, 5 times temperature of the sun. Okay, so this is an arc flash. Because of the arc, it has developed into arc flash. So what are the arc flash effect? One is electrical burn, arc burn, thermal contact burns. Electrical burn means it can be a tissue damage, or whether skin deep or deeper occurs because of the body is unable to dissipate the heat from the current flow. Arc burns caused by electrical arc that are similar to heat burns from higher degree sources. And temperature generated by electrical arcs cannot melt thereby material, vaporize the material in close vicinity, and burn flush and ignite clothing at distance of 10 feet. So this is the arc burns because of this. Thermal contact burns also, it is experienced from the skin contact with the hot surfaces. So because of this arc flash, you can have an electrical burns also, you can have a arc burns, you can have a thermal contact burns also. Arc blast means it's a full explosion. So high energy arcing fault generate a tremendous amount of heat, and this heat will cause melting. Okay, it will cause melting, it can have vaporization, it can have an expansion of conducting material as well as the expansion of air, creating a pressure wave. So because of this arc flash, the material can get melted, or it can vaporize it can expand, and it can give a pressure wave. So that become a full blast. It is actually a full blast, or you can say an explosion. You see it like an explosion. The full starter panel, there's an explosion. So arc blast is a name given to an explosive burst of energy that occurs during an arc flash. Example, like as I told you, like star delta starters, sometimes you'll find this sort of thing. Star and delta contacts are not released, you know, like in fact, first your star should make, and then delta should release it. But if both of them are holding, you'll find there's an arc flash. It can become an arc blast. The starter panel can blow off. So some of the times you'll find this sort of things like arc blast taking place, especially with the starter panels on board ship. This is sometimes because of the short circuit of the star and delta contactors. That means your three phase is getting short circuited. Okay, this is arc blast. Now, so we have seen these three things. What are the hazards we have seen? We discussed first is electrical shock, then we have seen arc, then you have seen arc flash, arc blast. So these are the various electrical hazards. Okay. Hazard means anything which is dangerous, which is occurring, that is called the hazard. So all these hazards, we have certain PPE which is to be used on high voltage ships. Okay. So the PPE, there are different categories depend upon the hazard categories, like risk category 1, risk category 2, risk category 3, risk category 4. The risk category is based on the hazard analysis. Okay. The hazard analysis means it specifies in calories plus centimeter square. Okay, the hazard category, we'll see in this what is hazard categories. Based on that, your PPE will also change. So if it is your hazard category 1, you should have this PPE. Hazard category 2, you should have 3. This one, 3, you have this. 4, you have this. So this is based on the energy that is in calories per centimeter square. How much is the energy which is released? Based on this, your PPE will also change. What PPE should be used? This is called a full arc suit. Okay, this is an arc suit, and you can see here this is having a face shield also. This is having a hard hat, and this is the type of high voltage shoes which is used, high voltage glosses. So you can see here this is a high voltage probe. He's connecting a portable earth cable with this. Okay, this is a special tool by which you can connect the cable, and this has got a distance about 1.5 meters around. This is a special tool, so you don't have to go near this, because now you are grounding it before you commence the work. So this is a earth cable, we are grounding it, a portable earth cable. So one is a flame resistant clothing. This is a flame resistant clothing, this one is also flame resistant clothing. It's called flame resistant clothing. It significantly reduces the burn injuries, which can save lives in the event of an accident. If employees are working on a potentially dangerous environment where heat or flame hazards are present, it is the responsibility of the employer to ensure workers are sufficiently protected. So this is a flame resistant clothing. Whenever you work on the high voltage, you have to wear this flame resistant clothing. Flame resistant clothing, it is made out of cotton synthetics or leather. It's depend upon what type of category you are going to work, category 1, 2, 3, 4. So we will see in the coming slides what is these categories. And some synthetic are inherently flame resistant, while clothing may be chemically treated for flame resistant. So it is flame resistant. Even the flames, it can resist the flames. Something like a fireman suit like that, that is also we are using for fireman suit. So it's a flame resistant clothing, special type of material which is used. So this is the dress you have to wear, flame resistant materials. It is something like this. Then insulated rubber gloves. This insulated rubber gloves, you can see this one. This is an insulated rubber gloves. This gloves has to be certified and it has to be tested. So if you are using a 6600 volt, this has to be tested at least to 10,000 volt, just to be tested. So you'll find on these glosses, it is stamped on this, and it is like I put a seal on that, mentioning that this has been tested to the higher voltage. It's safe to use, because especially when you touch the bus bar or when you touch the starter part inside and all this breaker and all, you have to wear this. Always you have to wear the hand gloves, high voltage hand glosses. And you have to make sure that there is no crack or there is no hole, nothing else, and it should be certified. It should be tested also. These are the mandatory requirements of this. So insulating rubber gloves are among the most important articles of the personal protection an electrical worker can wear. To be effective, electrical safety goals must be incorporate dielectric properties, physical strength, along with the flexibilities and durabilities. Okay. Another one is the arc flash hood. You see, arc flash hood is this one. This one, what is wearing? This is the arc flash hood. And some of them does not have a helmet. So you have to wear the helmet, then you have to wear this. If it is some of them comes with the helmet, then you can use the direct one. That means it should be hard hat should be there. So the rated arc flash hood is a single piece hard hat. It's okay. Here it is with a hard hat and a face shield that is encapsulated by flame resistant fabric. Arc flash hood fully cover the head and neck, offering a much higher and thermal ratings than the standard arc rated face shield. Safety glasses should be worn in conjunction with the arc flash. So you have to wear the safety goggles also in addition to this. Okay. And dielectric footwear, that is the high, that should be also withstand up to 14,000 volt. Okay, so electrical shock resistant footwear is manufactured with a non-conductive electrical shock resistant soles and heels. It must be capable of withstanding up to application of 14,000 volt at 60 hertz for 1 minute with no current flow or leakage in excess of 3 milliamps under dry conditions. So one is a shoes, that is footwear. Then you must have an ear protections. You should have goggles. So these are the general PPEs. So if you see what all the PPEs, let's say starting, one is arc suit, face shield, hard hat, footwear, blouses, and earplugs, goggles. So I think everything has been covered. These are the PPE which is used with the high voltage. This arc flash suit, now as I told you this arc flash boundary, here it's important to know arc flash occurs when the energy is released from an electrical arc. The arc flash occurs when the energy is released from the electrical arc. Now electrical PPE replaces regular work clothes to mitigate this risk of arc flash burning injuries. So you cannot use a normal regular clothes like a normal coverall, or you cannot use it. Standard PPE gear usually comprises of arc flash suit, hood, face shield, blouse, safety glasses, earplugs, etc. Now, the arc rating, a value of the energy necessary to pass through any given fabrics to cause a 50% probability a second or a 30-degree burn. This value is measured in calories per centimeter square. So the necessary arc rating of an article of clothing is determined by the hazard risk assessment and the resulting HRC. Okay. Now here, the National Fire Protection Association uses 4 arc flash PPE categories to classify the range of the arc flash hazards and the corresponding requirements of the PPE. So what type of PPE you should use based on the arc this hazardous hazard, what do you call, hazard and risk assessment and resulting HRC. Let's see what is that. This hazard risk category is there. Different type of risk categories are there. Hazard risk category 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Based on this, your PPE is to be selected. Okay. Different type of PPE, because the PPE will change depend upon the hazard risk categories, whether you fall in this or this. Now, what is this hazard risk category? Here it is written CL cm square. That means calorie plus calorie divided by centimeter square. This is very important because it is defined, the calorie per centimeter square is defined as the maximum incident heat energy that a fabric can absorb and lessen means reduce the injury to a 2nd degree burn. So why it is written calorie per centimeter square? That will define the maximum heat energy a fabric can absorb. So how much a fabric can absorb this heat energy, that is defined by these categories. So you see here means your category 4, your this energy is 40 calorie per centimeter square. So you need to have a particular type of PPE, or you need to have a different type of arc suit which can absorb 40 calorie per centimeter square energy. Okay, so this 1 Celsius heat unit is around 453.89 calories. So you can see here roughly 1.2 calorie means this 1.2 calorie approximately correspond to 48 degree Fahrenheit. Okay, 4.0 calorie means it relates to 85 Fahrenheit. If you say 8.0, that equivalent to 138 Fahrenheit. If you say 25, it's related to 365. 40 means it is 565 Fahrenheit. The temperature, equivalent temperature for this calorie per centimeter square, for 40 calorie per centimeter square, approximately around 565 degree Fahrenheit. So your PPE, what you required, has to be supporting this. Means your your arc suit should be able to absorb this much of temperature if you are falling in this category 4. Now this category again been decided by how much is this incident heat. So you may fall like 0, 1 or 2 or 3, 4. Depend upon this, your PPE will also change. PPE must be worn according to the hazard risk category of the installation concerned. Okay, the PPE what you are going to wear, personal protective equipments, must be worn, means you should use according to this category. So NFPA, National Fire Protection Association, that is a safety, or they take care of all these things, hazardous, a lot of like OSHA and all. OSHA means occupational safety and hazardous. Okay, so we'll see that one, more some definitions on this. NFPA has identified 4 hazardous risk category levels, fire risk, which are numbered from severity 1 to 4. So 0 is not shown here, it's 1 to 4. And the hazard risk category is a level of the arc flash protection clothing you must wear to protect against minimum level of incident energy measured in calories per centimeter square. Okay, so calorie per centimeter square, that will define the maximum incident heat energy that a fabric can absorb and lessen the injury to 2nd degree burn. Okay, so even if you get burned, it should be 2nd degree burn. 1st degree burn is very mild. 2nd degree is little more. 3rd degree means is extreme. That means you have a very deep burn. That is called the 3rd degree burn. 2nd degree is mild. Not mild, it is also skin burn, but 1st degree is mild. Okay, so this is the hazard risk categories. Now here you can see here, work on the high voltage equipments to be carried out as per the standard 7E defined by NFPA. So this is a 7E, means it is a National Fire Protection Association. There is a standard. The personal protective equipment to be worn by the workers should be as per the OSHA guidelines, that is Occupational Safety and Health Administration, and also must be adhered to the ASTM standards. This is also, this all basically, it's all American standards. OSHA also, NFPA also, they are American standards. So three international association which will define the safety standards for high voltage works are this. Okay, so basically all the safety stuff which are related to high voltage, we are following by OSHA or NFPA and ASTM. Okay, these are the 3 international association. They define the safety standards, you know, like what we see in SOLAS and all, safety of life at sea. In the same way, these high voltage safety standards are promulgated by these organizations, these 3 of them. So this is the arc rating of the flash suits. So the arc flash means, you know, arc rating means the value of the energy necessary to pass through any given fabric to cause 50% probability a 2nd or 3rd degree burn. So this is measured in calories per centimeter square. Okay, so hope you understood this hazard risk categories. So depend upon the hazard risk categories, your PPE will also change. Here you can see here, if it is category 1, it is fire resistant shirt, fire resistant pants, or a fire resistant coveralls. But when you come to 4, it is fire resistant shirt, fire resistant pants plus multi-layer flash suits, or 3 or more layers. You see, it changes because you are extreme. This hazard risk category 4 means the energy can be from 25 to 40 calorie per centimeter, which will almost equal to 565 degree Fahrenheit. So your PPE should be, or the arc suit, what should be able to absorb, the fabric what you are wearing should be able to absorb that much energy. So your PPE will change with this. So the 5 hazard risk categories are specified by the chart listed in the NFPA 70E. And the chart based on specific job task ranges from hazard risk categories 1 to 4. HRC is used to determine the necessary arc rating of the garment worn during given job. So what is the importance of this hazard risk category? That will decide what is the rating of the arc rating of the garment, what you are going to wear for a given job. So on board ship, you will find basically up to maximum. That means you will have a 40 calorie per centimeter. That is the arc suit. This arc suit what we have is maximum. So you can use any of these ratings. But these are the 4 categories are there. Again here, these calories, you can see different calorie per centimeter, it changes. And accordingly, your PP will also change. So there are some few definitions in this. Just we'll go through this. See, one is NFP, as I told you. This stands for National Fire Protection Association. And its mission is to reduce the worldwide burden of fire and other hazards on quality of life by providing, advocating codes, standards, research, training, education. Okay. 70E means it covers the aspects of electrical safety in workplace. It includes recommendation that those who work with or around energized equipment use adequate protection, including FR clothing. 70E. Flash hazard analysis means a study investigating the potential exposure to arc flash energy, that is worker faces while performing a specific job task. So that is called flash hazard analysis. So the data what you collect in a flash hazard analysis is used for the purpose of injury prevention, also determination of your safe work practices, also to find out the correct PP. So flash hazard analysis means whatever the data what you get, you analyze what are the purpose of the injury prevention, what are the determination of safe work practices, and what are the levels of FR clothing and PP. Arc flash, like arc flash means explosive release of energy caused by electrical arc. And arc flash results from either face to ground or face to face faults or accidental contact with the electrical systems, buildup of conductive dust, corrosion, drop tools. So you have arc flash, arc blast. Arc rating means the value of the energy necessary to pass through any given fabric. So all your fabrics have been arc rated, so that the fabric should be able to absorb the energy and reduce the injury. So that is the arc rating. Calorie means the energy required to raise 1 gram of water 1 degree Celsius from atmospheric pressure at 1 atmospheric pressure. Second degree burns occur at 1.2 calories per centimeter square. Second degree burns can take place at 1.2. Flash hazard means a dangerous condition caused by release of energy from an electrical arc. That is called flash hazard. So because of electrical energy is released because of an electrical arc and that dangerous condition. So what are the effect is called the flash hazards. Flash protection boundary means distance from exposed live part within a person should receive a second degree burn if an electrical arc occurs. The distance from an exposed live part within which a person could receive a second degree burn. That is called the flash protection boundary. Flame resistant means fabrics, like it should be ability to material to self-extinguish upon the removal of ignition source. So I hope you understood what are the PP we used, what are the various hazards, and what are the hazard categories, various categories, category 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and what are the PPE to be used. I have listed you various PPEs. So in the last class, we have seen what are the hazards of high voltage, like electrical shock. Then we saw like electrocution, electrical shock, and what are the hazards of the arc flash, arc blast, and what are the PPE required, what is flash hazard analysis, flash hazard categories. Depend upon the flash hazard categories, your PPE will change. Okay. Now coming to this permit to work systems. What is the definition of a permit to work? This is the definition of a permit to work means it's a form of declaration. It's a form of declaration signed and given by authorized person to a competent person. So authorized person sign and he declares, given to a competent person in charge of the work to be carried out or in close proximity high voltage apparatus, making known to him that extent of the work. So that should specify what is the extent of the work, what all the apparatus are dead, what all the apparatus are isolated, what has been discharged, what has been earthed, and insofar as electrical hazards are concerned, on which it is safe to work. So this is called permit to work definition. It's very important. What is a permit to work? Okay, who issues a permit to work? Authorized person. He issues a permit to work. Authorized person issues a permit to work to competent person. What all the permit to work contains? It will contain what is the extent of the work, what all the equipments have been dead, what is being isolated, what has been earthed. All these things will be mentioned in the permit to work. I will show you one permit to work format. So permit to work is issued by an authorized person to a responsible person or a competent person who will perform the task of repair maintenance. Generally, it is valued only for 24 hours, a permit to work. Permit to work can be extended, but with the permission of the authority, you can extend it. Otherwise, it is valid only for 24 hours. Permit to work to be reevaluated by the permit holder if the work extends 24 hours after issue. So it can be renewed. Format will vary and customize for a particular vessel or marine installations. You will find onboard ship depend upon the company, because some of the company has got a different format. So permit work may change. What you see here, it may not be the same, but almost the contents will be the same if you see the permit to work in other ships also. So what are the main parts of a permit to work? It is always prepared in duplicate, and it has got 5 sections in that. The first section that states the nature of the work to be carried out. Okay, permit to work first section is what is the nature of the work. Example like this, for a generator, if you see, Megger test of a generator, inspection of the generator winding, maintenance of the breaker, or inspection of the breaker contact. So that will states what is the nature of the work what you are going to carry out. The second section will declare where the electrical isolation and earthing has been applied, and where the dangerous or caution notice has been placed. So second section is basically isolation. That means the equipment is dead, the breaker is off, the breaker is isolated, the breaker is earthed. So second section is that. Third section is signed by the person receiving the permit. That means a competent person is receiving it. You should sign that, and he is satisfied with the safety precautions taken and isolation earthing measures adopted. That means competent person is satisfied with the isolation procedure, what is earthing procedure. That is the third session. Fourth session is signed by the permit holder that work has been completed. Fourth means competent person. He will sign saying that the work has been completed and or it is suspended. And fifth section is signed by the issuing authority cancelling the permit. That is the authorized person. Once the work is finished, authorized person says the permit is cancelled. So that is the fifth session. So permit to work, these are the 5 sessions. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sessions. You see, generally you will find this is a one format. As I told you, this may not be same with all the ships. When you go on board ship, it will be something different. But you can see here in this permit to work, it says issued to. Okay, the system is isolated safely and locks and caution signs fitted here. Equipment is earthed and safety locks are fitted. Dangerous signs are posted. So normally what they do, they put tick mark here, or they write whatever, anything you want to write, you can write here. Any other precautions taken, that should be mentioned here. The following work shall be carried out. Authorized person, date. Then receipt. So this is signed by, I hereby declare that I accept responsibility for carrying out the work on the electrical equipment as described on this permit to work, and no attempt will be made by me or a person under my control to work on any other electrical equipment have been shown as being initialized arrangements of the isolation. This is signed by the competent person. Clearance. Clearance means that all the equipment specified in this permit to work and all the gear tools I hereby declare that the work for this permit issued is open and completed. Okay. And cancellation, this is by the authorized person. He signs here, he cancel it. Competent person signs here means he has completed the job, he accepted the job, and this all the mention, this also normally ended here and signed by the authorized person. So this is a permit to work format. Okay. So here is main points are that what is a permit to work? So it is a form of declaration signed and given by authorized person to a competent person in charge of work to be carried out on or in the close proximity to the high voltage apparatus, making known to him that the extent of the work, exactly what apparatus is dead, is isolated from the live conductors, which is being discharged, earthed. So this is the definition for permit to work. Very important. What is permit to work? Okay. Who issues permit to work? Authorized person to competent person. What is the validity of permit to work? 24 hours. Can be extended. Format will change from ship to ship. What are the parts of sections of permit to work? 5 sections. First section, nature of the work. Second section, isolation, grounding. Third section, competent, the person receiving the permit is acknowledging. Fourth person, that work is being completed. Fifth session, work is being cancelled. Very simple. First, second, third, fourth sessions. Okay. So this is the various sections of permit to work. Just now we'll see risk assessment. I'm not going in deep of this, but just give a small introduction how a risk assessment is made on board ship. What is a risk assessment? Why we need this? This is very important. Any high voltage work, you have to make a risk assessment. Okay. Risk means combination of a probability and severity of the consequence of a specific accident. Risk means it's a combination of probability and severity of a consequence of a specific accident is called risk. Hazard means what? The potential to create or contribute to a harmful event is called hazards. So a potential to create or contribute to a harmful event. Okay, the potential to create or a, so something which is coming out of anything, you know, like high voltage. What are the hazards of high voltage? As I told you, like electrical shock, electrocutions, arc flash, arc blast, arc. So this is the hazards. So something is coming out of something. That means the potential to create or contribute to a harmful event. Some harmful events can take place. That's called hazard. Risk analysis, systematic identification of workplace hazards and the severity. So you need to systematically identify what are the hazards. That is called risk analysis. And risk assessment is evaluating whether risks are acceptable. So risks are acceptable or not. If the risk is not acceptable, then you cannot do the work. Okay. So risk classification process as simple. Identify the hazards and potential accident. That is the first part. You must identify what are the hazards and what are the potential accidents. Simple example, like when you are doing a generator maintenance, what is the possible accident can be? Loose connections, heating, explosion, fire. So these are the hazards, potential accidents. So then you first specify, define the frequency or likelihood that an accident might happen. So in risk assessment is a special, is a format. In that you have to mention this. What is the frequency and what is the likelihood? Frequency or a likelihood that accident can happen. So like, is it unlikely, or it can be possible, or it can be probable? Like when you are in case of a generator without regular maintenance, the probability of loose connection is very high. It may take time, but it is possible due to the engine vibrations. Number 2, define the consequence. What is the impact of hazard and what is the potential accident would have? Insignificant, tolerable, moderate, serious. So it's very serious or not, it's moderate or not. So if you look at this, format, you see this is the format of a risk assessment. Now here you have to write what is the likelihood chances, what is the severity and consequence. Now here the risk assessment, consequence and likelihood, this multiplied by this is your risk score. Okay. So risk assessment matrix you make, then you write the consequence. whether it is negligible or it is minor or significant or serious or life-threatening. Then like-food means occurrence. How often it happens? Rarely, unlikely, possible, likely, probable. So this is the occurrence of this, and this is the severity of this. Can be negligible or not. Now, when you multiply this and this, that means one you have one reason. As I told you, like a loose fire. That means whether it is negligible or minor or significant or serious or life-threatening, you have to score from this, and you have to see the score from this. When you multiply both score, if it is falling in this means it is low. If it is 7 to 12 means it is medium. If it is falling 13 to 25 means high. 1 to 6 means you can continue the work. But if you are 7 to 12, then you have to make an additional protections, some additional protections to take care of this risk. But if it is falling in this, do not start the job before the risk has been reduced to level 1-3. So every hazard what you write, you will have two columns to be filled. One is severity column and one is likelihood column. Multiply severity with the likelihood and then you get the score. If the score is falling 1 to 6 means monitor, manage changes in situations. Be aware of the changes in the situations. Take additional precautions if possible, if you are in this. But if you are in this, review the task and try to refine the task to a lower risk value. You should bring all your tasks into this range. Then you are safe to start the work. If you are in yellow or red, you cannot proceed with the work. So once you make any job, like when you are working on a high voltage, you have to make a risk assessment. You have to write the severity and consequence. You have to make the likelihood. Then you find, when you put this, you get a score in this. If you are falling in this score, you need to monitor. You can manage in green, yellow and red. That means you cannot start the work. You have to make additional precautions. Suppose the fire, fire hazard is there. So then you can say like standby person, fire sender is present, CO2 extinguishers are present. So all this will reduce this risk and it will come to this score. So this is the risk classification process example, okay? This is very important, how to make the risk assessment, because high voltage, all the high voltage work, you have to make the risk assessment. Then high voltage test equipments. You see, generally what you see on a high voltage ships, on board ship, you will find only these three stuffs. One is a high voltage probe. You see the probe, it's not you cannot measure a high voltage with a normal multimeter which is on board ship. You have to stand certain distance away from the high voltage. This probe is around 1.5 meters long probe, and you can see here, this probe you touches here, you get a voltage indications here. So you can see the probes are here. There are two sets of probes in this, and yeah, there are two sets. I think there's only one. Yeah, there are two sets in this. So this is a high voltage probe. This is a high voltage measure in this. Okay, normal 500 volt measure you cannot use on board ship. For 6.6 volt, you need 5000 volt DC measure. This measure you will find three wires. Normal measure you will find only one positive and negative. Here you will find one more wire. You see the blue one? This is called the guard terminal. Okay, the guard terminal, it's an additional to positive and negative. So you have a positive, you have a negative, you have a guard terminal. The guard wire is used to connect any surface leakage current. So this is connected outside the surface leakage current because of the moisture or surface leakage current. It is connected on the outer part. So this is called, this is a 3-wire, it's a guard terminal. Okay, remember this is a guard terminal. So this is a high voltage measure. This measure has got the facility to measure insulation resistance also, and PI also, that is the polarization index test. So by selecting the switch PI selection, you can measure the PA index also. So this is a high voltage probe, high voltage measure. Okay. So this is about the test equipments. So we have covered about permit to work. What is permit to work and what is risk assessment? What are the various test equipments? So switching and isolation procedure on a marine high voltage systems. You see, this is the full, what are the procedure you should follow when you are working on high voltage systems. So here we have taken an example of a inspection on generators. Okay, so inspection of generator winding, inspection of a high voltage generator winding. So first thing is the plan. You plan the job. So scope of the work. What is the work what you are going to carry out, and what is the sequence of isolation? How you are going to isolate it? Okay, so sequence of isolation means like everything is included, like taking the generator from standby, putting to manual control, and starting air, closing out starting air. All these things are sequence of isolations, breaker isolations. So first plan the job. That is the first step. So here work is inspection of a generator winding. How you should proceed? First you plan the job. Once you plan the job, then you come to risk assessment. You make the risk assessment, find out what are the hazards and what are the hazard score. If the score is very high, what precautions you have taken to reduce the hazardous score to 1.6 level. So risk assessments is mandatory once you plan the job, because the plan is carried out on board ship. Normally in the work plan meeting, the work is planned. So you explain what is the work you are going to carry out, whether it is a generator winding inspections or mega test of generator or switchboard inspections or a breaker inspections. That is a work. So first in the plan section you explain in the work plan meeting, then you make a risk assessment. Risk assessment should be conducted by the competent person, authorized person, and anybody supporting in this, whoever is involved in this. They create a risk assessment, find out what are the various hazards, how you can reduce the hazards. Then prove dead means make the equipment dead. That means if you are going to inspect the generator winding, make sure the generator is totally isolated, it is dead. Then isolate the generator. Isolate the generator means from the engine control room also you have to isolate it, locally also you have to isolate it. Then lockout for life. That means put the lockout tags. Locking, like starting gear valve is to be shut off. Turning gear to be engaged. Breaker is to be isolated. It should be locking. Wherever you need to put locks or wherever you need to put the tags, that is for the lockout for tag. Then permit to work is issued. So after you make all these things like planning, proving dead, isolation, lockout for life, permit to work will be issued. Permit to work will be issued by the authorized person. Once authorized person satisfies that the equipment has been dead, it has been isolated, it has been locked, it has been tagged out, he issues the permit to work. Then the work can be commenced. Once the work is commenced, you have to put the barriers so that nobody can approach into your work areas and no accidental touching of the live parts. Everything is ensured. Work is commenced. On completion of the work, once the work is completed, then we test the equipments. Okay, once you completed, we do the testing of the equipments, and when the test is finished, everything is satisfactory. Go for de-isolation. Once it is de-isolated, then give for the sanction to test. So that is also another permit, sanction to test. Once you finish, test and prove that you tested everything, it is proved in fine. Generator, everything is being put back. So then test and prove, then put in service. So remove all the isolations like starting gear, turning gear, everything. Remove everything, put the machinery back into the service conditions. Then at the last, permit to work is cancelled. So once the permit to work is cancelled by the authorized person, the equipment is back into service as normal. So this is the switching and isolation procedure on high voltage systems. Okay. Okay, what is the next is okay, this we will see in the next class. So what we have been discussed today, just I will recap of it. So we have discussed what are the hazards of the high voltage. Okay. As hazards of the high voltage we have seen, like electrical shock and so electrical shock, electrocutions, arc flash burns, arc blast. So hazard means anything, like anything accident which can take place, because of the high voltage, some hazards, electrical hazards can take place. Okay, so we have seen electrical shock, electrocutions, arc flash burns, and arc blast. Then safe distance, how much distance should be safe from the high voltage equipments. Electrical shock, we have seen, very important, AC and DC. Why? Which is more dangerous, whether AC or DC? Okay, what are the, why we say AC is more dangerous? There I explained to you 3 reasons why AC is more. One is because of the peak voltage. Second thing is the capacitive effect. And third one is the AC has got a direct effect on the heart, cardiac systems. So these are the main reasons why AC is considered to be more dangerous than DC. Peak voltage in case of, because RMS voltage of the DC, RMS voltage of AC is equivalent to DC voltage. But peak voltage in case of AC is going to be much higher. Okay. And second thing, the capacitive effect. Because in case of capacitor, in case of DC, the capacitor blocks the DC, but in case of AC, it passes. So capacitive effect is also main factor. Second thing, what is the effect of shock at higher frequencies? So more higher frequencies means your impedance is reduced. Impedance is increased, so your current is reduced. So higher frequency means it is lesser current. Okay. Higher the voltage means the current is going to be high, because I is equal to V by R. So higher the voltage, higher the current. So what is the effect of shock on higher frequency, higher voltage? What determines the effect of shock? So the severity of the shock depends basically upon the voltage and the resistance. The level of the voltage and the resistance, and also depends upon the path of the current through the body, the amount of the current flowing through the body, the length of the time the body is in the circuit. Electrocution means it's a death. Electrical shock means it is only shock. It can be because of the shock, you can fall, you can burn, you can get burned. Okay, there's a difference between electrocution and electrical shock. So what is electrical shock? Is it because of the current or the voltage? It is because of the current flowing through the body that causes the electrical shock, but is the voltage level and the electrical path resistance that determines how much current is flowing. It's very important. So electrical shock, the main, it is because of the current, but again it depends upon the voltage level and how much current is flowing. So that determines your body resistance. Higher body resistance, less shock. Okay, so various type of the current. You see, minimum is 15 milliamps current is let go, but anything more than that can be dangerous. So you can see 60 milliamps means it is let go current up to 16 milliamps. So we have seen what is arc. It's a very important question. What is arc? What is arc blast, arc flash, and arc blast? 3 different things. It going in events like this: arc flash, arc blast. What are the injuries can be because of the arc flash? Electrical burns, arc burns, thermal contact burns. Okay. What are the various PPEs we needed? If you go with the total PPE, one is arc suit, face shield, hard hat, and high voltage glosses, high voltage footwears. Okay. And again, the PPE depends upon the hazard risk categories. The category changes depend upon your PPE will change depend upon the hazard categories. Now the category again mentioned by calories per centimeter square. That explains, it is defined as the maximum incident energy that a fabric can absorb. You can see there are different fabrics, because this is 0 to 4, then this becomes 40. This is 4, 8, 12, 40. You see 40 has got a total different PPE. Here it is a total different PPE. Here is also different. So this risk category will specify what type of PPE we should use. Okay. Then we have seen Permit to work. What is a permit to work? What are the various sections of a permit to work? Then I have shown you what is a risk assessment, how to make a risk assessment. Okay, this is very important, risk assessment, how to make a risk assessment. For every risk, you have to write down the severity and consequence. You have to make the likelihood conditions, multiply severity and consequence with the likelihood, you get the risk score. If the risk score is 1 to 6 means it is low. But if you are between medium and high, then you have to take the necessary precautions to bring down this risk score into the low risk score. Then you can commence the work, otherwise you cannot start the work. Various test equipments, high voltage test equipment you have seen. And then what is the switching and isolation procedure from beginning? Example is like inspection of generator windings from starting onwards. Plan, then make the risk assessment, prove that, isolate, lockout for life, PTW, work commence, work completed, de-isolation, sanction to test, test to prove, put in service, cancel, permit to work. So this is the end of this for today. And next class, we will practical applications. We'll see go one by one. This isolation procedure again. This I have written in details. What you are doing it only one one work. As I told you, in this case is generator winding inspections. What is the sequence of work? In the next class, we will see. Okay, then insulation test and other things. Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. If you have any other things, just put me in the mail if any clarifications on any topics. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.